Gabby, this is a very, very important question. How you answer this question is going to determine what happens next. But the only person who can answer this question is you.
Okay.
Think very hard before you answer the question. Do not quickly answer it. Think very hard. When you slapped him those times, were you attempting to cause him physical pain or physical impairment? Was that what you were attempting to do to him?
No.
What were you attempting?
On a warm day in late August of 2021, Gabby Petito was immersed in the journey of a lifetime. She and her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, were on a cross-country van trip, visiting some of the most striking national parks in the United States. Gabby was only 22, brimming with excitement and creative energy, eager to document every stop for her budding social media presence. She had launched a YouTube channel called Nomadic Static, hoping to build an audience by sharing glimpses of nature's grandeur, her road trip anecdotes, and her bright, ever-present smile. A free spirit who loved travel, art, and healthy living, Gabby was described by those closest to her as someone whose enthusiasm could lift any room. What nobody realized at the time was that those final weeks of August would be her last. Soon, she would vanish without explanation, sparking a nationwide search that ultimately brought heartbreak to the forefront of millions of minds. Gabby's life began on March 19, 1999, in Blue Point, New York. She was the oldest of 6 siblings and half-siblings, a tight-knit family that found both comfort and chaos in the swirl of a big household. By her teenage years, Gabby's affinity for spontaneity and creativity had already begun to surface. After graduating from Bayport Blue Point High School, she briefly lived in North Carolina, then moved to Florida to be with Brian Laundrie. Their bond started as a typical young romance. The two shared a love of art, nature, and an ambition to see the world. Even in those early days, Gabby's parents saw in her a zest for discovery. She wanted to break free from conventional routines, to chase experiences that would one day fill her journals and social media feeds. In July of 2021, with COVID-19 having disrupted traditional work and daily life, Gabby and Brian decided it was the perfect time for an extended road trip. They outfitted a 2012 Ford Transit Connect van with the basics: sleeping space, small storage, cooking supplies, and set off from New York. Over the next few weeks, they documented their travels online. Snapshots of Gabby practicing yoga in the desert, Brian sketching in a notebook by a campfire, panoramic shots of mountains and valleys. It all seemed enviably idyllic. Close friends back in Florida and New York would scroll through Gabby's Instagram, liking and commenting on how happy she looked and how lucky she was to embrace the van life dream. But the veneer of adventure was already showing signs of stress. On August 12, 2021, in Moab, Utah, a 911 caller reported seeing a man slapping a woman in front of a local natural foods store. The police soon pulled over a white van near Arches National Park. Inside were Gabby and Brian. Body camera footage later released by the Moab Police Department showed Gabby visibly distraught, struggling to catch her breath as she repeatedly apologized. She attributed her distress to bad OCD, tension from building a travel blog, and feeling overwhelmed. Brian, outwardly calmer, spoke of an argument that flared and hinted that Gabby was the one who became physical. Officers concluded the couple was in the midst of a mental health crisis rather than a classic domestic violence scenario. They separated them for one night and issued no charges. An independent report would later criticize the officers for not issuing a domestic violence citation and for missing signs that Gabby may have been the more vulnerable party overall. Days after the Moab incident, Gabby's social media updates began to wane. Her final confirmed Instagram post appeared on August 25th, featuring her smiling outside a butterfly mural in Ogden, Utah. According to her mother, Nicole Schmidt, Gabby had excitedly mentioned heading toward Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. Over the next few days, cryptic texts trickled in from her phone, but they were uncharacteristic. One referred to her grandfather, using a name she'd never used before. Another simply read, "No service in Yosemite." By August 27th, eyewitnesses in Jackson, Wyoming, reported a commotion in a restaurant called the Merry Piglets, where Brian seemed agitated and Gabby appeared upset. That night, their white van was seen near the Spread Creek dispersed camping area, just outside Grand Teton. It would be the last credible sighting of Gabby alive. On September 1st, Brian Laundrie returned to Northport, Florida, alone. Gabby's van was in his possession, yet he gave no explanation about what had happened to her. When Gabby's parents realized they hadn't heard from her in over a week, panic set in. They attempted to contact Brian and his family, but got only silence. On September 11th, they reported Gabby missing to the Suffolk County Police in New York. Within days, news of her disappearance went viral. Social media platforms exploded with theories, rumors, and earnest pleas. Hashtags like "Find Gabby" spread across Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. In a digital age where crowdsourced investigating has become a phenomenon, thousands of strangers scoured her photos, analyzing possible locations and searching backgrounds for clues. In some ways, this intense collaboration helped. A travel vlogger recalled capturing footage of Gabby's van by accident near Spread Creek around August 27th. That tip guided law enforcement closer to the site where she would ultimately be found. Meanwhile, Brian and his parents hired a lawyer and refused to cooperate with investigators. On September 15th, police officially labeled Brian a person of interest, though they hadn't announced evidence linking him to a crime. Yet the public was already fixated on his conspicuous silence. Gabby's family grew desperate. Her father, Joseph Petito, gave tearful interviews urging Brian to speak up, or at least help direct police to the last place he saw Gabby. Then, 4 days later, Brian's parents reported him missing, saying he had supposedly gone hiking in the Carlton Reserve on September 13th and never returned. In a baffling twist, the man sought for answers to Gabby's disappearance had now himself vanished. The frantic search for Gabby reached its tragic conclusion on September 19th, when authorities discovered her remains near the Spread Creek campsite in the Bridger-Teton National Forest. The FBI announced the heartbreaking discovery that afternoon. Public hopes that she might still be alive collapsed in an instant. A subsequent autopsy revealed she had been killed around late August by blunt force injuries to the head and neck with manual strangulation. While memorials sprang up across Wyoming, New York, and Florida, attention turned to Brian Laundrie's disappearance. The question weighed heavily. Had he fled the country? Was he hiding in Florida's swamplands? Sightings or rumors placed him everywhere from the Appalachian Trail to Mexico, yet none of these leads bore fruit. On September 23rd, the FBI issued a federal warrant for Brian concerning his alleged unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card, an indication that he had withdrawn funds after her death. This gave authorities broader leeway to pursue him. Frustration flared. Many believed law enforcement should have monitored Brian more closely before he slipped away. Others criticized the Laundrie family for withholding crucial details. Still, no one knew precisely where he had gone. While investigators gathered evidence in Wyoming, a national media spotlight illuminated every corner of the case. People questioned whether domestic violence warning signs had gone unrecognized. Professionals pointed to the body cam footage from Moab as a key moment when Gabby's mounting distress was overlooked. On October 20th, Brian's parents joined law enforcement in searching the Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park, part of the Carlton Reserve area near their home. Conditions had improved after floodwaters receded. Within a short time, they discovered a bag and notebook belonging to Brian, as well as partial skeletal remains later confirmed through dental records to be his. A revolver was also recovered. A medical examiner's report concluded Brian died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The only person who might fully explain what happened in Gabby's final hours was now gone, complicating any legal closure or chance of a criminal trial. It took until January 21st, 2022, for the FBI to reveal a crucial detail. Inside Brian's notebook was a written confession. He admitted to killing Gabby. Investigators also discovered that, in the days after her death, Brian had sent text messages between his phone and Gabby's phone to deceive authorities into thinking she was still alive. These texts were sent in late August and early September, and the FBI described them as evidence of Brian's attempt to deceive law enforcement by giving the impression that Ms. Petito was still alive. With that, the Bureau declared the case closed, stating, "All logical investigative steps have been concluded, and the investigation did not identify any other individuals involved in Gabby's tragic death." For her grieving family, the wrenching revelation confirmed what they had feared, but not known for certain. Brian alone was responsible. Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt, alongside other relatives, were left to cope with the terrible truth that the man who was supposed to care for Gabby had taken her life, and then, once public pressure mounted, died by suicide rather than face the consequences. The couple's once happy images, an emblem of carefree van life, were now tragically transformed into evidence of an allegedly hidden pattern of escalating tension. The case provoked additional debates about the role of law enforcement in recognizing potential domestic violence. In Moab, an independent investigator found that officers should have issued Gabby a citation or otherwise taken official action. Although the police separated Gabby and Brian for one night, critics said it was a missed opportunity to uncover a pattern of emotional or psychological abuse. 1 month later, Gabby was dead, reinforcing painful questions about how many similar incidents slipped through the cracks. Meanwhile, commentators and journalists questioned the outsized coverage her disappearance received compared to missing person cases involving Black, Indigenous, or other people of color. The phenomenon known as missing white woman syndrome came under renewed scrutiny, spotlighting the disparity in attention for marginalized victims. Advocates pointed to the many missing persons whose families received little to no national media coverage. While such discussions stirred controversy, others took the view that any heightened attention to domestic violence or missing person cases could spur reforms, and that Gabby's story, while tragic, might encourage early intervention in future scenarios. After the FBI officially closed its investigation, civil disputes and potential legal cases lingered. Gabby's parents explored legal options against the Laundrie family, alleging that Brian's parents knew more than they admitted. The Petito family also turned their grief into activism. They had already established the Gabby Petito Foundation, aiming to spread awareness about intimate partner violence, missing person resources, and early signals of harm. Critics pointed out the irony that Brian had accompanied Gabby on a public-facing trip, documenting scenic stops and personal moments online, only for her life to end behind that same social media curtain. In total, the Petito Laundrie saga spanned barely 3 months from the time the couple set out in July until both were found dead by October's end. Yet in that short window, their story evoked discussions about media ethics, police training, online sleuthing, and the real-life consequences of domestic violence. Gabby Petito had been 22 years old, poised on the threshold of adulthood and excited to launch a travel blog. No one foresaw the horror that would unfold in a remote clearing near a national park she had longed to explore. Ultimately, Gabby's story continues to resonate, not because of any further legal twists, but because her tragic end shed light on profound social issues. Her name remains associated with a high-stakes manhunt and a final verdict that domestic violence took her life. While many unresolved questions about motive and escalation may never be answered, the official case stands as one of the most scrutinized disappearance-to-homicide investigations in recent memory. For some, it is a sobering look at how fleeting social media snapshots can mask a storm beneath the surface. For others, it underscores the urgency of listening to those subtle cries for help, remembering that behind every peaceful Instagram moment can lie hidden turmoil. Gabrielle Venora Petito lived only 22 years, but in that brief span, she inspired friendships, laughter, and creativity. Her journey through America's parks, documented in pictures and video clips, remains a bittersweet testament to her desire to see the world and share it with others. She set out with hope for a future filled with exploration and self-expression, yet fell victim to a violence no one fully witnessed. The heartbreak she left behind reverberates as a reminder that domestic violence can erupt unexpectedly, and that behind each well-edited photo, a very different reality may lurk. What began with a missing person alert concluded with two families in mourning and a public left grappling for meaning. Gabby Petito's death was not just another tragic event. It was a national awakening to the complexity of intimate partner violence, the limitations of policing domestic disputes, and the ways social media can both help locate a missing person and stoke a frenzy of rumor. While that distinction closes the legal record, the moral and emotional lessons of Gabby's story endure as a modern parable of how swiftly an idyllic road trip can descend into the worst possible nightmare. Her loved ones will forever cherish the memory of her warm smile and adventurous spirit, and a broader audience, having witnessed the case unfold in real time, continues to reckon with how to spot warning signs before another life is irreparably lost.